Is it time for the open letter? Okay. Today's open letter is to the Great Terror. But first, let's see what's in the secret compartment for today. Oh, a legally binding document. I wonder what that's about. First, let's talk about the way that the Great Purge negatively affected people such as Yevgenia Ginsburg, who wrote a memoir from her interrogations to her time in the gulags. There were many reasons that one could be purged for, and many victims had little to no factual evidence pitted against them. People were deprived of their basic rights, such as sleep, food, and water, in order to get them to admit to whatever they were being imprisoned for. But this is nothing compared to in which interrogators could ask prisoners. This led to many people admitting to crimes that they did not commit or admitting to crimes that were greatly exaggerated from their origins. While waiting to receive a sentence for their crimes, Yevgenia Ginsburg once said that the cleanlier the prison and the nicer the guards, the closer that one was to their death. It was normal for prisoners not to be allowed to receive packages from their families, and their activities were limited depending on the time of the day and other factors. Cells oftentimes were overcrowded, and many personal items were confiscated. Watches and books, for example, were not allowed. Prisoners found it important to communicate with one another and stay up to date with what was going on in the outside. In situations where verbal communication was not possible, prisoners resorted to the use of a tap alphabet in order to communicate with one another. Letters were split into the first series of taps were representative of the white coordinate, which went from up to down, and then the second series of taps would determine the went from left to right. After finally receiving their sentences, people often went through multiple facilities to receive their punishment, whether it was solitary confinement or work in a labor camp. Once again, conditions varied from case to case. We have learned a lot about the Great Terror through primary sources, since many members of the general public were not actively aware of the purges until it had been going on for a long amount of time. Many historians believe that Stalin started purging in order to eliminate political, namely those who supported Bukharin and Trotsky. Efforts later grew to include those who had general ideological differences. Obviously, the Great Terror negatively affected. The number of people killed in the Great Terror is estimated for 1 million at the least. And that's obvious. Similarly to the Holocaust, it is difficult for us to understand how this all happened without anybody stepping in and without anybody really noticing. So it's important that we try to see things from perspective of the time and not be affected by hindsight bias. Best wishes, Lucian, Emily,